and welcome back to the Deadology Podcast. From a pop-up studio in Lake Placid, New York, I'm your host, Howard Weiner. And this is Season 3, Episode 9 of the podcast. And today, what is today's date? June 18th. June 18th, 2025. And for this episode, we're going to be taking a look at It's Underrated Gems, Volume 4, New Haven Veterans Memorial Coliseum, April 22nd and 23rd of 1983. And before we dive into the shows and discuss why it's underrated, just two quick announcements. Next week's show, we'll have Doug Schmel back on the podcast, and we'll be looking at a classic 1973 Grateful Dead show. And the first week of July, Mick Bondi from the Garcia Project will be joining us to talk about the upcoming tour for the Garcia Project and all things Jerry Garcia Band related. And the other thing I wanted to mention before we go to New Haven, 83, last week the music world lost two giants, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys and Sly Stone of Sly Stone and Family Stone fame. And that's the one that really hit me, Sly Stone. A huge fan for me. He's in my top dozen musicians of all time. I have that high of regard for what Sly Stone did in that relatively short run he had in the late 60s through the 70s. Just he basically changed music, brilliant performer. And indirectly, it was a Grateful Dead performance that led me to Sly Stone. When Without a Net came out, the official Grateful Dead release, I believe it came out in late 90. It had a show from Nassau Coliseum from March, I believe it was March 30th or 29th, 1990, the one where Branford plays that incredible Eyes of the World. Branford Marsalis joins the Dead on stage. I heard that and it blew my mind. I wasn't at the show, but I first heard it on CD. And I had this thought, why am I not into jazz? Why don't I have more jazz albums? So over the next year or two, I went out and bought maybe 1,000 jazz CDs. Probably 100 of them were Miles Davis. I went nuts with Miles Davis. And I read the Miles Davis autobiography. And he doesn't have a lot of great words to say for people. He's not one who dishes out compliments freely. But man, he was crediting James Brown and Sly Stone for helping him lead the way to his fusion music and Bitches Brew, the change that Miles underwent and revolutionized jazz. And he really gave a lot of credit to Sly Stone. Now, I had never looked at Sly Stone as being, that important as a performer. Miles also dug the way he dressed and everything going on with Sly Stone. So I said, I got to investigate Sly Stone, man. And I got a hold of some of those albums, some of the greatest albums I've ever heard. My favorite one being Stand, which has Everyday People, Want to Take You Higher, Sing a Simple Song. There's a great instrumental Sex Machine on there. One of the greatest albums. And also I love Fresh, which If You Want Me to Stay, In Time. Another classic, There's a Riot Going On, Family Affair, Thank You for Talking to Me, Africa. Just the man basically invented funk, or it was the godfather, the key to it all, influenced so many people, basically started a genre of music. And yeah, so it was the Grateful Dead indirectly that brought me to Sly Stone. And yeah, those are three albums. If you're not huge on Sly Stone, I'd recommend those three highly. And I think if there's, obviously the Grateful Dead pick up on so many different influences, but if there's one song where I think I definitely hear like a Sly Stone influenced jam, it's at the end of Dancing in the Streets. So we're going to check out a little bit of that. This is from Philadelphia 77, a little tribute to Sly Stone. Thank you for letting me be myself. Rest in peace, Mr. Sly Stone. And Underrated Gems, Volume 4. Let's dig into why New Haven 83 is considered, for me, an underrated gem, both shows. Basically, it's towards the end of a tour that is incredibly consistent, great show after great show. So I think that there's other shows from this tour that kind of get lost in the shuffle. But as I revisited these shows from spring 83, I was just kind of struck by the consistency of the band every single night. And just to do a little comparison, I recently, on the 40th anniversary, went back on the anniversary dates and did the spring 85 tour. And I call that the Helter Skelter tour because the shows were all over the place. Certain shows like Providence 85 and I listen to all the time. There's essential great shows to me, but also that tour on the very next night in Philly, April 6th, just an abomination of a show. So it was so weird that particular tour, how it went up and down. And the Grateful Dead occasionally, as we all know, would have some off nights, but this spring 83 tour is as consistent as it gets. And to just kind of put it in a rating kind of spectrum for you, if I'm looking at that 85 tour, the shows could go anywhere from a 2 to a 9, with 10 being the best. Europe 72 is a 10. So nothing from 1983 is going to be a 10. But I think that 85 tour, you could be as low as a 2 and as high as a 9. This 83 tour with the New Haven shows, everything falls into the 7 to 9. I would say the first two shows of the tour, Morgantown and Hampton and Morgantown, probably are in the 7-8 range. Everything after that, the next 11 shows, I would say are all 8-9 in that territory. Very unusual for the Grateful Dead in any era to be that consistent, but kind of blew me away as I was revisiting this particular tour, how consistent it was. The night before was a great show in Providence. They did a little Throwing Stones, Morning Dew, Sugar Mag to end it. Great Eyes of the World that night. And the thing with this tour and these shows, everything was just laid out so perfectly. The set list construction, it was as if the Grateful Dead handed me a notebook and said, make the set list for us, buddy. Just don't do anything crazy like put a St. Stephen in there or something ridiculous. But you make the shows, all the songs you want to hear. So what they did on this tour, there was like 3 Scarlet Fires, 5 Help on the Way Slipknot Franklins, 3 Morning Dews. They just took all their great stuff and somehow it balanced out so that every show has a great set list. And these New Haven shows kind of especially sparkle, and they just got lost in such a consistent tour. So let's go with the first night, April 22nd. Open up with Feel Like a Stranger. And for me, this is probably like a top 10 Feel Like a Stranger. It doesn't have the hottest jam. There's definitely a few with hotter jams, but it's the totality of it. The Weird does a great rap. The band's singing perfectly. It's a very strong jam. Let's start the audio highlights off by checking out the end of the opening of Feel Like a Stranger.
Feel like a stranger. I don't know about you, but you feel like a stranger too. Feel like a stranger. Some nights everything just gets stranger and stranger. Feel like a stranger. Sometimes maybe there's just a little element of danger. Feel like a stranger. Feel like a stranger. It's crazy night. Crazy night. Feel like a stranger. Stranger, stranger. Stranger, stranger. Feel like a stranger. It's gonna be a long, crazy, crazy night. Long, crazy, crazy night. Feel like a stranger. It's gonna be a long, crazy, crazy night. Crazy night. Crazy night. Crazy night. Crazy night. Feel like
There you go, a Kung Pao opener. Dead Rock New Haven would Feel Like a Stranger, flawless execution on the instrumental, superb group singing, quite an opener. And then I have such a good feeling thinking back about this show. Something about these New Haven shows, man. They played there, I'm not looking at the exact numbers. I think they played there 11 or 12 times, 11 times I think it was. I caught the last 5 shows there, 82 through 84. The New Haven Coliseum was shut down in 2002 and demolished in 2007. But it was there was something about that place. It was just a lot of energy. Always liked going to New Haven because it was only about 90 minutes from where I lived. But just, being at that, I was at a juncture in my Grateful Dead career. I think this might have been like my 15th, 16th show. So I thought I was full of a ton of knowledge, but I was 10 out of 10 on the enthusiasm scale, man. It was so much fun being at these shows and such excitement early in my Grateful Dead journey. Song 2, Bird Song. And to hear that early in the show is pretty amazing. Very hot version. A couple, maybe 5 years ago, I wrote Volume 2 of Deadology, the 33 essential Grateful Dead jam anthems. And among the 33 songs that I picked out, I talked about the history, laid out some of the best versions ever performed of it. 2 of the songs in the book were Feel Like a Stranger and Bird Song. So very unusual to get 2 big hitters like that to start off the show, so you could see what kind of night was evolving here. Very good Bird Song. I was out of my mind with excitement that night. But yeah, great for... You're definitely getting your money's worth when you get as far as the instrumentals go. Stranger, Bird Song to open. And the third song, C.C. Rider. You would look at a set list and not thinking anything of it, and that would be a huge mistake. Sometimes these amazing instrumentals pop up out of nowhere in the strangest of places. And 81 to 83 were good years for Red Rooster and C.C. Rider, which they pretty much alternated every night. I preferred Rooster over C.C. Rider. But my God, this C.C. Rider is the highlight of this first set. It's that freaking good. It might be the best C.C. Rider of all time. So I'll let Jerry tell you all about it right now. Jerry burning, churning, shredding the blues for New Haven. Awesome C.C. Rider. And a quick comment on Bob Weir's Sly guitar playing. I know he takes a lot of criticism for it, and I never liked it too much when he stepped into a Jerry jam. Like if Jerry's doing Sugary and Weir would come in with the slide, I would find it a little annoying when he would cut into a Jerry jam. But as a setup for Garcia, for me, it was perfect. I loved hearing it because it would get me more psyched for the Garcia when he handed it off to Jerry. It just something about Weir doing a slide and then the handoff to Jerry. It framed Garcia's solo perfectly. So I always kind of enjoyed the Bob slide guitar as he handed off to Jerry in songs like Minglewood, Rooster, and C.C. Rider. Moving on, and I'm going to move through the rest of the set pretty quickly. I got 2 shows to cover here, so don't want to slow this up too much. We got Road Jimmy 4th, Mama Tried Mexicali 5-6, and then a real nice surprise at song number 7, Cold Rain and Snow. Obviously, usually don't catch Cold Rain and Snow in the middle of the set. They did it on occasions, always nice. Cold Rain and Snow was one song that would always get the crowd very excited. You know, you would never complain about seeing a Cold Rain and Snow. And this is a good version. Jerry's in good vocal form this night. And Providence, that was a great show, but his voice was giving out a bit that night. After an off night, he definitely recovered, sounding pretty good here in New Haven. And cool, Cold Rain and Snow. 8th song, we get one of the new numbers, My Brother's Seesaw. Never been thrilled with that song. Not a bad song, but when you put it in the midst of all these amazing Grateful Dead songs, I don't think it stands up too well. Set ender, Deal. And I was a little bit surprised at how good this deal was. It's pretty smoking. And I kind of like the way I look at what makes a super hot jam. This isn't an instant rewind deal where you're like, my God, I got to go back and hear that again and play it 3, 4, 5 times. But there's no way you come away from this without saying, wow, that was super hot. So definitely a hot deal to end it. And 1983 was, 82 they started doing it, but really 83 was the year they started extending deals. 84 was a great year for Deal. And I think they had a great rebirth of Deal like in 1989 where Garcia had some real hot jams. So this was a great time period for Deal, and they definitely rocked out this performance then the first set. Second set of April 22nd, 1983, boom, they hit you right with the Help on the Way Slipknot Franklins. And it was so cool because Help Slip Franks was on the shelf since 1977, and they broke it out in 83. They did one on the West Coast, and this was the first East Coast tour of the year. They played it 5 times, which is incredible. I don't think any other, I could almost bet on it, man. No other tour saw 5 Help on the Way Slipknot Franklins. If you're not looking back to the 70s when they first came out with the song. But 5 Help, every venue where they played 2 shows, Brendan Byrne, New Haven, Philly, they broke out the Help on the Way Slipknot Franklins. So everybody got a taste of it, and the band kept getting better with each version. I think the following tour, Fall 83, the versions got significantly longer, especially the Slipknot. But this second set, I listened to this so much. There's something about this Help on the Way Slipknot Franklins goes into Samson, just perfect execution, no sloppiness, just the Grateful Dead on the money. And I'm going to play the Slipknot for you. And the whole thing here, just it's about 5 minutes, you know, as they went up to about 7 or 8 minutes as time went on in 83 and 84. The one from Madison Square Garden, October 11th, 83, I think is easily the best. But yeah, this version, the beauty of it is just so concise and right on the money. I mean, the band is just smoking. It's like flawless. I think that's what I so love about this Help on the Way Slipknot Franklins, and why I kept going back and listening to it when I got the tape. This would have been like, I don't know if a soundboard's out on this one. I'm pretty sure it's just audience. But this would have made a great official release because the playing is just flawless. And I think you'll see what I mean here. Enjoy the Slipknot. A tight knot indeed. Yeah, so the obviously they go into Franklin's, and as I kept re-listening to these tapes of the 2 nights in New Haven, I was kind of blown away at how good this Franklin's is. The second half of it, Jerry's absolutely shredding, and just no wonder I listened to this tape a lot when when I got it. I probably got it about a month after the show. It became like a favorite of mine. I really haven't listened to it much at all in the last couple decades, but really nice to go back. And I'd recommend this tape won't let you down. If you break out, go to re-listen, check out April 22nd, 83, just a solid show all the way around. So after the great Franklins, they go into Samson, keeping the good rocking mojo going, Hot Samson. And, a lot of years, Help Slip Frank Sampson would lead the drums. But like I'm saying, this tour, they were all in, really giving it their all. At time, I would say that this 83 tour is even more consistent than 78 or 79, 80, even though they might have been better in some ways those years. But like in 78, you'd get these, it would be an awesome show. Then all of a sudden there would be Drum Sugar Mag, Good Night, so just the band's very focused and all in at most of these April 83 shows. So after drums, once again, no easy shortcuts, no easy go-home stuff. It's Truckin', Spoonful, Stella Blue, Round and Round, Good Lovin', and a Baby Blue Encore. I mean, that's 11 songs, and with the encore, 12, and obviously not counting Drums or Space. So the two highlights of that second half, the Spoonful is one, a very cool version, Bobby singing it. And I checked this because I wasn't sure. I was like, is this one of the first Spoonfuls the Dead played? It was actually the second one they did. They first did one in Amsterdam, 10/15/81. They broke out a lot of crazy stuff on those 2 nights, and the Oops concerts, as they're known, in Amsterdam on April 15th and not April 15th, October 15th and 16th, especially the 16th. But the first Spoonful ever was in Amsterdam. And this is number 2, and excellent version, coming out of Truckin'. And the other major highlight, well, Baby Blue is always going to be a highlight. The Good Lovin' was good, but the Stella Blue, man, Jerry singing is great. And I was definitely taken by surprise by how good the Stella outro is. This is a great Stella outro. That's kind of one of my things I've, over the years, like there's certain songs that go down in stature in your mind, and certain songs that go up, like let's say Looks Like Rain. I really have trouble listening to that these days. I've definitely fallen out of love with it. I heard it too much. It just doesn't do a lot for me anymore. But Stella Blue is one of those songs, back in the day I liked it, but now it's a godlike song to me. The only thing is a lot of times Jerry didn't kill the outro in the 80s. Sometimes Bobby would jump in too quickly, or whatever the case may be, but when Garcia nailed a hot Stella Blue outro, this song could almost take on like the magnitude and importance of A Morning Dew. And once again, I recommend downloading the show, giving it a good listen, because it's a great Stella Blue with a very strong outro. Night 2, April 23rd, 1983, back in New Haven. I'm sure I didn't stay over. It was close enough where I went back home, got a good night's rest, got some free food at the folks' home, and headed back out. And I know I was at this show with Doug Schmel. I don't know who else may have came with us. He was probably with me at the first show too. He wasn't taping yet. He started taping in 84. Show opens up with Alabama Getaway, It's the Greatest Story. You could tell that Jerry's in the mood, hot Getaway. So, but the thing about Getaway, back in the day, it was almost like a commonplace opener during the years I started seeing the Grateful Dead. And then it may have been 1984, 85, they really cut back on doing it and almost stopped altogether. So it was like something that seemed very commonplace, but we should have appreciated it more than we did, even though I'm sure we did. I mean, this is a great Getaway to open. It's the Greatest Story. And even the Greatest Story has a little extra pop to it. Candyman, the third spot, sure it hit home, and Deadheads in New Haven enjoying it. Minglewood 4, it was a so-so version. This might have been the one-off version of the evening. The solo wasn't spectacular on this. Tennessee Jet 5, and then going to a much desired combination, Lazy Lightning Supplication. And this is a pretty good version, but the funny thing with the Lazy Lightning Supplication is as they started playing it less, it became a more desirable song and people appreciated it more. But also, Weir would miss more lyrics. The band would miss some segues on it. It got a little. It was always amazing because they would always pull it out somehow, but it got a little sloppier when they stopped playing it a lot. But this is a cool version. Not a top 10 or anything, but anytime you see Lazy Lightning Supplication, you see plenty of satisfying jamming. The next song, Peggy-O, may have been the song of the set. Garcia's solo is great. He sang it beautiful. Awesome late set Peggy-O. And once again, just to point out the effort that the band, the Grateful Dead, are putting in this tour, these shows. You hit this point, we're going 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Peggy-O was 8th, and they played Far From Me, which one of the cooler Brent tunes. It always pops up in these cool little situations, never overplayed, but when they were in the mood and having a pretty good night, Far From Me would always kind of pop up somewhere. So you get Far From Me in the 9th spot, and they closed the set with Music Never Stopped. I believe this was my second time singing Music Never Stopped. The song got me excited like no other song, probably still to this day, but it was like definitely a favorite of mine, so I was out of my mind excited to see Music Never Stopped end the set. And this is a good version. The very hot jam at the end, but they just missed making this like an instant replay version. It's definitely, with as many great Music Never Stops as there are, this one isn't going to hit any kind of top 10 or top 20 list, but there's great jamming on it. And if they just would have taken it one step further, it could have like hit the spot as a great Music Never Stopped. But if you listen to it, you'll definitely be impressed. Hot Music Never Stopped. And that's the first set, 10 songs. Second set, once again, they're going to pour everything into this. And I'm going to get back to an audio highlight very shortly here because we're opening up with a Scarlet Fire. Now, the Scarlet, very hot. One thing, as we get the ending of the Scarlet going, it's one of the coolest things I've ever heard is they somehow, the band, Jerry, they just raised the temperature on the end of that Scarlet jam. You could viscerally feel them, like the heat building. I've heard better Scarlet jams, but there's a way they just raise the intensity at the end of this where they're gonna blow the roof off New Haven with the Fire on the Mountain. So it was like it was perfect the way they just raised the intensity. And I mean, you could hear them raising the temperature. You could feel it. You could see the red. It was incredible. Great Scarlet. So they get to the fire. And I'll never forget this. I'm out there with Doug. We're having a great time. We know Jerry's going to kill it. That second solo starts, and we're loving it. And I'm going to play you the second solo. There's so much energy on this version. It's almost like Garcia has trouble channeling his ideas. Jerry's always very logical, mathematical, even when he's shredding at that like incredible speed. He just puts solos together magnificently, a brilliant mind on guitar. This one is almost like the band's almost out of control on it. Like everybody's playing fiercely and totally into it, but it's as great as it is. You'll hear what I'm talking about when I play this. It's an incredible second jam and Fire, but it's almost like off a little bit. It's very unusual, unlike any other Fire jam you'll ever hear. So enjoy this second jam of the Scarlet of the Fire on the Mountain from New Haven. That, my friends, is a wildfire. What it lacked in smoothness, definitely a 10 out of 10 in energy and enthusiasm, man. That Fire in the Mountain, Scarlet Fire from New Haven, I would put in my top 20, but it was weird. It was almost like the band was like so, they couldn't find like, this smooth footing that they usually have, but man, Garcia went off on that jam there. Now, my little story, which I'll never forget, that we call this, me and Doug call this the puke scare, because during this second solo, as Garcia's going nuts and we're in our glory, the guy behind us puked, and I'm trying to focus. I know I'm seeing great history and I'm totally locked into Jerry, but there's a guy puke. I mean, hey, it was a very unsettling jam. I'm not surprised somebody puked during this. It was like that pressure packed of a jam, but we turn around. I'm keeping my focus on Garcia, but at some point I did have to notice that this guy puked on the chair behind me, the chair that had my jacket on it. And my jacket was a jean jacket with a Steal Your Face on the back. The coolest freaking jacket to this day, I've ever owned in my life. I love that thing. But it was history, because it was a lot of puke on it, and it was a little bit of a chilly night. I also had to go home in a t-shirt after the show, which I didn't care too much. But man, it was the death of 4/23/83, the death of the coolest jacket I ever had. I remember getting that jacket in Nanuet, New York, the Route 59. Any guys, it was a pretty famous area of New York. You had Tapesville, USA, where we'd get all our albums. I got my first Grateful Dead albums there. Behind that, there was Nathan's. Besides the great food, they had like 50 pinball machines. It was like the best arcade. And behind that, you had the Nanuet Mall, which in the days, it was a cool mall, all mom and pop type stores, as opposed to what a mall is today. It was a different experience. And there was also a head shop to the side of this, and I can't remember the name of this store, but I got several shirts in there. You would pick the decal, put it on a shirt, and I came up with the idea, and this was even before I was really into the Grateful Dead. I just knew their greatest hits, like Skeletons in the Closet. I got the Steal Your Face on the back of this jean jacket, and man, it was a loss. It was a tough loss for me that night. I love that jacket, but it died heroically during the Scarlet Fire of 4/23. And as the show moves on, once again, there's no let up in the effort by the Grateful Dead on this night. I get a Sailor Saint next, and it's a little off. Jerry jumps into the Saint a little too quickly. They miscue on the Saint a couple times. Unusually off Sailor Saint, but Jerry does redeem the Saint. Very good solo from Jerry and Saint of Circumstance. Then we go to Drum Space. I think there's some extra jamming after the Saint of Circumstance. So they come out of space and they play the other one. And I totally forgot about this other one. It's 19 minutes long. I think the reason, maybe what happened to my jacket affected me that night. I had no idea until I started listening to this tape again how cool and how long this other one is. So it's definitely, they go from space, they break into the other one. It's a combination of noodling the other one and jamming. Phil holds back on his typical blast off for 13 minutes. So they're just noodling in other one heaven for, very unusual for this time period, for that long of a jam leading up to the other one. Then Phil does a little blast off. There's a smaller jam before Bobby comes in for the first lyrics. But they're on a roll because the between verse jam is also extremely hot. So it's a 19-minute other one. That's going to be the outro. I'm going to play the entire other one as the outro. So if you want to hear that, hang in till the end. We're almost there. I didn't want to cut the other one, do anything to it. It's like that good of a listen that I wanted to leave it on at the end for the outro. So in the 80s, they definitely shortened up the other one. Some nights you would catch a little magic here and there. Some of my more favorite other ones from the 80s, the 70s is like head and shoulders above. But I'd say this one is probably my fourth or fifth favorite now from the 80s of other ones. A few other insane versions of other one from this time period. You got Ventura, July 31st, 81. Now, as I'm saying, it is 7th. That's the correct date. Another almost as long as this one, but hotter. I mean, Phil goes ballistic all throughout this one, and it's another like 17-minute version one, so that's one worth checking out. Paulie Pavilion, June 29th, 80. They actually played a very hot other one in New Haven, 9/23/82. That one's definitely shorter, unlike this one, but very hot. So great other one. Hang in to hear that other one at the end. We got Wharf Rat, Throwing Stones Not Fade Away. This was the early days for Throwing Stones Not Fade Away. I think they just started playing it in 83. First time I saw it was at Binghamton, and they did the Not Fade Away chant, and I was totally enchanted with it. It was my first time seeing it, and probably by this time, I think I caught it one other time. By the time this show rolled around, I was like, oh no, they're going to be playing Throwing Stones Not Fade Away every 3 shows for the rest of my career. And it became a little too cookie cutter. They should have made it. They should have kept it a little rarer. The Throwing Stones Not Fade Away. But yep. So we got other one, Rat, Throwing Stones Not Fade Away. Once again, an equal after drums. They took no shortcuts at any point. Sometimes you get the 2-3 song after drums or 3 songs before drums. These shows are everything is full as it should be. Long first sets. Before drums long, after drums long. And we get to the encore here. 2-song encore. East Coast. Why they did a double encore on this night. They were loving New Haven, man. So they did the One More Saturday Night, and Jerry finished up with a Broke Down Palace. Just incredible, like in the middle of an indoor tour. The double encores were more like summer tours. They would occasionally do that. So they're very rare. We got the One More Saturday Night, Broke Down Palace for New Haven, and just another awesome show. And on an earlier episode, I did the Binghamton show from 4/12/83. That's another great one from this tour. Vermont the following night, great show. They played Rochester. They had the 16th and 17th, the 2 shows at the Brendan Byrne. Then they played Orono, Maine. On the 19th, Providence. Love that show. These 2 New Haven shows, and then the Philly Spectrum to close out, which is a Dave's Picks. Those are great shows. So, yeah, just a great tour to revisit. And, hey, thanks for listening. Once again, Doug Schmel. We're going to do 1973, one of the most famous shows, Vancouver. And then Mick Bondi from the Garcia Project for the following episode. Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Howard Weiner. Website, tangledupintunes.com. Email, catfishgarcia82@yahoo.com. Speak to you next week. Peace out, and hang in there for this brilliant performance of the other one.
That's the smoking crater of my mind. I like to blow it away. With the heat come round and buffet me for sliding on a cloudy day. Coming around now. Coming around. Coming around. Coming up. Coming up. Coming around now. Coming around. Coming around.
across an empty space. He trembled and exploded. There's a bus stop in his place. The bus came by and I got home. That's when it all began. There was calm on heel at the wheel. The bus should never ever land.